G'day and welcome to this Silly Point podcast reviewing the World T20. Start again, Phil. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Right. Good day and welcome to this Silly Point podcast reviewing the World Test Championship final between New Zealand and India at Southampton at Gears Bowl. Joined today by Richard and Declan. Richard, we'll start with you. As a Kiwi, you must be very proud of this team.
Look, I'm not the oldest person in the world, but in the 30 plus years that I've followed this team, was without a doubt the proudest day yesterday. Several times of disappointment. The oldest cricketing memories I have are of the 1992 World Cup, when we were knocked out in the semi-finals, having scored a lot. Obviously, the 2015 was disappointing at the end, and in 2019 can be described as utter heartbreak. So there's a lot of redemption, today, and I couldn't be more proud of them.
You've seen some fantastic New Zealand players down the years today. Richard Hadley, Martin Crowe, Jeff Crowe, Bevan Congdon. But where do you rate this side with the likes of Ross Taylor, Kane Williamson, etc., etc.? They're sort of like, this is like a golden generation, do you think?
Yeah, without a doubt. Obviously Richard Hadley and Martin Crowe particularly, legends of the game, and would make it into sides anywhere in the world at any historical time. But in terms of a team, in terms of the players from 1 to 11, this is without question the greatest team we've ever put on the park. So yeah, I'm just so thankful that the cricketing gods have smiled upon us once more. They threatened to maybe another half day of English rain, and we'd have been sharing that mace. So finally we managed to the coin managed to land on the correct side for once.
I wanted to get some perspective, I suppose. I heard some interesting kind of statement that you're the smallest Test nation currently playing Test cricket, nation of 4 million. I think it's pretty incredible how much you've punched above your weight in recent years, and even more so in this Test Championship final. I just wanted to get a perspective from a Kiwi about what this will do for kind of New Zealand cricket now. Like, I know in the past, I suppose you paid, definitely second fiddle to rugby, but, rugby league's relatively big in New Zealand.
Yeah, I think it'll be great for the game. We've and not only obviously cricket has played second fiddle to rugby for obvious reasons in New Zealand, but not only that. Like white ball cricket has been a lot more popular in New Zealand compared with red ball cricket. We don't have the Ashes to look forward to. We don't have the Border Gavaskar Trophy or those kind of long standing rivalries with other Test nations. So I think in terms of the Test game, you'll see a lot of renewed interest. And even in the last couple of years, you see crowds turning up to games where you wouldn't get half the amount of people in the grounds even 5 years ago. So I think it's only going to be positive from here on in.
Yeah, I thought it was quite amazing, the Kiwi contingent at the Gears Bowl. I didn't even know that was that many Kiwis still left in the UK. Other than yourself.
Yeah, there's a few of us, and I got a couple of emails from the because I did actually enter the ballot because you're only allowed 4,000 in the ground because of COVID, and I wasn't successful in the ballot, but I was offered tickets to day 5 and day 6. Couldn't go for various work reasons, but I'm pretty sure there were a number of sickies pulled at bars in Shepherd's Bush and in other sorts of places. There's at least 14 of us left in the country, so.
Leading into the Test Championship finals, India were ranked number 1 in the world. They'd just come off beating Australia and England. You were definitely, I'd say, you're probably slight underdogs. Is that fair to say?
I think it was fair to say in the lead up, yes. But I think the conditions suited us down to the ground. I think England did everything that they could to make it easier for New Zealand and perhaps not so easy for India. We were afforded two no disrespect to England, warm-up test matches that didn't have any bearing on the next World Test Championship. So, we were able to get used to the conditions. The weather god smiled upon us. It didn't bake. It wasn't 30 degrees every day. It was cloudy. The ball was swinging around. It was a very difficult wicket to bat on. So, all the stars kind of aligned for us in the actual moment. But yeah, in the lead up, I think I'd say we were probably slight underdogs. Yes.
Looking at the actual Test Championship, so India beat West Indies, beat South Africa, beat Bangladesh, lost to New Zealand away, and then beat Australia and England. So they've gone through probably the world's top three there, other than New Zealand. I think for New Zealand, it was a 1-1 drawn series in Sri Lanka, got thumped out in Australia, and then from there, I think that must have been a turning point, because beat India at home, beat West Indies at home, beat Pakistan at home. And they were all quite convincing. I think it has to be said, Kyle Jamieson coming into the team has made such a difference. He was outstanding in this final.
Yeah, he's given us another option. That he sort of complemented that four-prong pace attack now with Southey, Bolt, Wagner, and now Jamieson. So we are able to just go with four seamers and somebody like a de Granholm, like a bits and pieces bowler to complement the attack. But it's interesting, yeah. I mean, talking about the lead into the final. Yeah, we obviously got thumped in Australia. And then after that, we didn't really have any other option but to win every Test match in order to qualify. But yeah, I mean, we also played England in there as well, but it wasn't counted towards points for some reason, and we beat them 2-0 in New Zealand, and then again we played them over here and we won the series 1-0. So in terms of knocking over the giants, New Zealand has beaten India in a Test series at home and also won in a neutral venue. We've beaten England home and away. Okay, we've not beaten Australia, but India can say the same. They've knocked over 2 out of 3 of the other big Test nations. So I think we were pretty deserving to be there, certainly.
Yeah. Well, let's kick off then. Hey, day one, Phil. Did you bring your umbrella?
Not a lot to talk about on day one.
Yeah, I wish I had been there. I wouldn't have had to suffer the Queensland sun for so long. Yeah, it was a shame, wasn't it? Really, I mean, there was just all that such great, expectations especially for the New Zealand fans, and I suppose the Indian fans that are in England, and I'm pretty sure there's plenty of those. I just think that that waiting all that time, and then obviously the English weather decides then to empty down, and everybody's going, oh no. Is it going to be really going to be a damp squib? And so I'm pretty glad that they set aside that 6th day. I think it was the first time in 40 years, 45 years since they've had a 6th day.
1975.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, long time ago. I'm glad they had that extra day. I'm sure you would have been the same, Richard, having what the outcome was. But
too right.
It was really disappointing watching that. Turning the TV on and seeing that you knew almost from the start they're not going to be playing today, and then obviously they got out on the second day a bit better, but then the third day again the same thing, and they're thinking, oh my god, here we go again. It's like I don't know. It's there's not much you can do. England in June is not. It's not going to be like scorching.
I'll be interested to see if in this next cycle from 21 through to 23, whether the final is supposed to be in England again. I know they want to play it at Lord's, being the home of cricket, etc. But it would have been obviously a real shame if weather had ruined it, and a result wasn't possible. I was talking to some friends who we said, it would have been easier to play it at the MCG, despite the fact that it was June and despite the fact that the middle of the AFL season. But there are other options in the world to play the final, and I do wonder whether England was the best choice in June, being as unreliable as it is.
I think also the AG as well, because we 2 days we had to go off for bad light in the end. I think the Ageas Bowl has been a bit of a nightmare. Obviously, it's served its purpose during COVID, and I think the hotel that.
You mentioned that. You mentioned that with the hotel. You know, the other ground in the UK with a hotel on site is Old Trafford here in Manchester, and the sun shone for those whole 6 days. We wouldn't have had a single day off for rain. So I'm just putting it out there.
You don't seem sun in Manchester, for goodness sake.
You probably find that hard to believe, but I promise you, I was surprised. I was surprised as both of you are right now.
I am surprised after they decided not to go to Lords that they chose. There's no disrespect to Hampshire or Southampton. I'm surprised they chose that as the venue. Edgbaston would have been unbelievable as well. Imagine the Indians in Birmingham, and there's plenty of Kiwis in Birmingham as well. It's like. I
would have quite liked Eden Park or something, but beggars can't be choosers.
What would you think then if it would be like on a ranking, whoever you've beaten as you go through the thing, if you're in a league system, do you then become the host of the final if you've beaten this? Is that the way it should work? Maybe
kind of Eurovision. If you win one year, you host the next year. That's definitely one option. The other option would be to go through the test nations, and each cycle, this was England's turn, so next time it might be Australia, or it might be India or South Africa or West Indies or whatever. So any way to share it around, I think, is good for the game generally. I just don't see the ICC really caring about anything other than the big three. Let's be honest, despite the fact that New Zealand is now number one test nation.
How did you see the performance during the game of the Kiwis? To me, this New Zealand bowling attack, I'm thinking that Kyle Jamieson, at the moment, in current form, is the best bowler in the world on current form, and Tim Southey's not far behind. In his conditions, he's probably head and shoulders above anybody else in his conditions. Whereas Carl Jones seems to be able to do it on all surfaces in all conditions. And then you've got Trent Bolt and Wagner. So I think this Kiwi attack covers all bases. You've got a left armour, you've got a swing bowler, you've got somebody with a bit of height, and then you've got Wagner who can bully players out, which he did with Rahane in that second innings.
I would have loved to have had Jamieson in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about that 2-0, that defeat in Australia. New Zealand had so many injuries, and there was a lot of expectation before that, wasn't there? That they were going to do well, and all of a sudden they got these injuries, and they sort of it was like a real damp squib. And I think this side will give Australia a very good game.
I've said to a number of friends and colleagues that the Ashes down under this summer, obviously Australia's borders are still going to be closed, so there's not going to be an English fan contingent, certainly not to the same extent as there normally is. So why not just delay the Ashes, and New Zealand can come to Australia for 5 Test matches, and we can settle it there. Maybe we could have 3 in New Zealand, 3 in Australia, and 2 in New Zealand or something. That'd be nice. But yeah, I mean, I think they do have the bowling attack to worry anyone in the world, and I think it's the fact that it's sort of unrelenting. There's no soft option. And they're really, really good at playing just basic Test cricket for long periods of time. I think a lot of teams are a bit guilty of having a kind of limited overs mindset and trying to push the game forward at a rate of knots. New Zealand are really patient. If I don't have the stats to hand, but certainly the run rate in the final was 2.3, 2.4 runs and over. But if you look at the series that we just played against England, we were scoring it under 3 runs and over, but still getting ourselves into positions where we have enough time and space to take 10 wickets, take 20 wickets. So yeah, that bowling attack is really helpful for us.
Well, and I think it's telling, Richard, that you say the consistency. I was just looking at the stats there. Colin de Grumhole only bowled 12 overs the whole 2 innings, and then it was just the other four-pronged attack that just did the work. And I mean, they got through a lot of overs between them, but they were especially on that last afternoon or last morning. Sorry, they were just deadly. Just I don't think any batting attack in the world could have faced that.
I mean, I think the weather played into their hands a little bit. I mean, okay, obviously the pitch was helpful and the air conditions, but not to mention the fact that the bowlers had a whole day off. Day one was obviously a washout, and so was day 4, 3. I mean, I was losing track of days during that week. But that does it does complement the fact that New Zealand does seem to have enough top order batting to allow the bowlers enough time to rest. Is it David Saker who says about bowlers, give them a day off and they'll win you a test match, and I think that really rings true, and I think every team around the world needs to kind of take on that mantra if they want to be successful.
I'm watching England in that warm up game for New Zealand. You said I like that 2-test series. England decided not to pick a spinner as well, and everybody's up in arms about that. But in England, I don't think it's as important as it is maybe in Australia to have a spinner, because obviously in Australian conditions it's hot. Your bowlers are going to get tired quicker. But in England, if the conditions suit, then why can't you pick a 4-prong pace attack? In New Zealand didn't have Mitchell Santner, which surprised me a little bit.
No, I agree with you, Phil. The reason why that series was lost by England, in my opinion, was the fact they just didn't score enough runs. They were never in a position to put enough pressure on New Zealand. So New Zealand were able to bat for longer periods of time and score more runs. Devon Conway with 200. I mean, did any English batsman score 100? I don't remember. I don't think they. There was Rory Burns got an 80 odd. And
Sib got 80 when it was when the game was done and dusted, and I'm looking at. We're talking about the Kiwi batting order. And you mentioned Devon Conway there. How good is he, by the way?
South Africa be kicking themselves.
Just looking through that. Imagine picking a South African side with all the South Africans that play for different nations. Wow, good! They'd have a well-beaten team, wouldn't they?
They sure would. Yeah.
It's Colin de Grandhomme, isn't he? Is he South Africa?
No, he's
Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwean.
Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
So
maybe
but I mean,
broader...
that South Africa would be kicking themselves with Devon Conway. I liked him ever since he came in the T20s and the one-day games last year, and you could see he's got a bit of class about him.
Yeah, and he can modify his game. He can play all 3 formats successfully. He got 99 off 50 balls in one of the T20s against Australia, and he did, just casually scored a double 100, Lords on his test debut. I mean, easy as you like. I mean, he reminds me a lot of Mike Hussey, actually, just in the fact that he's been he's older and he's scored an absolute ton of runs at first class level before he's been picked. Obviously, he's not been able to be picked because of the residency rules, and we understand why. But yeah, I just hope that bowlers around the world don't work him out, because he's going to be a real asset for us at the top of the order.
Yeah, I think that partnership actually for you guys was really key. So Latham, who it's fair to say has had kind of a pretty steady international career in recent years, and Conway, I think Conway's 50 in the conditions, but it almost counted as 100. I think in the general wash. It was so telling. It was so. I think. Well, we can go through it. India all out for 217. I think getting that 50 on the board really went a long way to winning that Test match. And
he arguably batted at one of the most difficult points in the Test match, just weather-wise and in what the pitch was doing. So yeah, I mean, full credit to him. In some ways, it was in a lot of ways, it was more valuable than his double ton at Lords.
I think the difference of what you said earlier about the Indian and New Zealand batting, like Pujara batted for a long time but didn't actually do anything for the Indian course. He sort of like stuck around, but he didn't turn the strike over or anything like that. He didn't sort of get signals. He just stayed there. And took how long did it take for him for his 15
35 balls?
Yeah.
35 balls took him.
Yeah, you've got you've got to take your opportunities. You've got to put the bad ball away, don't you? And conversely, you look at how Williamson and Taylor batted when they came in at 2 for 60 or whatever it was. They were single figures off 50 balls each. But they did manage to kind of go through the gears. It's a shame, Pujara, because I wonder if he's a couple of years past his best now. He was incredible in 2018-19 in Australia in that Test series. Australia just couldn't get him out for love or money. But they seem to have worked him out ever so slightly now, just kind of putting the balls in the right areas.
And the thing about that is, I think that puts pressure on the likes of Kohli and Rohit Sharma and Shubman Gill to get the scoreboard, get moving up at the other end. Therefore, they play more riskier shots. And Kohli's not been at his best over the last couple of years. Even in Australia, he wasn't at his best. And so when he's not firing on all cylinders, the Indian middle order isn't as good as it can.
It's a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, heaps.
And you look at the Indians. You look at the Indian side that beat Australia at the Gabba. Kohli wasn't there. I mean, half the team wasn't there. But yeah, it's interesting. That they do rely upon his energy. If he's doing well, then the whole team kind of tend to do well.
Well, I thought actually it was quite telling, because you're right. I think Kohli and Rahane both showed good intent when they came in the first innings. Even Rohit Sharma and Shubman Gill at the top of the order, they looked to score, and then it almost kind of that Pujara thing where it kind of stagnated, and then they had to kind of build the momentum back up after he got out. So it was kind of in the overall outcome of the game. I think it did, that was so crucial, that first innings, and it was just to kind of stagnate along after showing a bit of intent on the second day.
And they were in good position when Kohli and Rahane were in. They were in a good position, and for them to New Zealand to get Kohli so quickly, on that the second morning or whatever, third morning, I can't, all the days.
So third day.
Yeah, third day, fourth day, anyway. But to get him so quickly, if he'd got another 40 runs, you're looking at a different game, if India get to 280, 300, then you're looking at a different game, totally different game.
Yeah. And I also thought, quick mention to Ravi Ashwin that got out by the exact same ball from Tim Southey twice,
and who batted at 7 in this Test match, and he's obviously got 5 Test hundreds to his name. He batted really well in India against England. But for somebody who does that, you'd think you'd need to be slightly more of a specialist batsman. I think he was batting just a little bit too high, in my opinion.
I think Jadeja should be coming ahead of him, shouldn't he? Surely, you'd think.
Or they need another batsman.
Another batsman. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I think the trouble is that now they're sort of looking at every time Rishabh Pant comes into bat, they're looking at him to be the saviour, like he was in India a couple of times, like he was in Australia, and there's a lot of pressure on him as well. To turn it around, and because Pujara's batted so slowly before that, then Rishabh Pant needs to up the rate when he comes in, and so therefore he plays shots that, I know he's a risk taker anyway, but he's probably taking more risks on the wicket than it was there. So him only getting a handful of runs rather than
the thing is, you look at other batsmen around his, similar style of batsmen. Looking at Devon Conway, just given that he can be so destructive in the limited overs format, or you look at someone like Ben Stokes. I know he's not a wicketkeeper, but I think Pant needs to perhaps develop another side of his game. I mean, it's being as destructive as he is. Obviously, if that comes off, you're going to win that Test match 9 times out of 10. We've seen that, in every form. However, you've got to play the situation sometimes. When Ben Stokes single-handedly won that Test match at Headingley in 2019, he was 1 off 50 balls. or something. He scored incredibly slowly at the beginning, and then he ended up getting his final 100 runs at strike rate at 200 or something. So if Pant has it can and he could develop. He's young, isn't he? But at this stage, I think he's a little bit one dimensional, and I think he probably needs to work on that if he wants to have success consistently.
Yeah, it's funny. I've got it in my notes from day 6. Pant doing
sounds weird
Pant
to say,
things.
doesn't it? Day 6.
Pant doing Pant things, and I think that's exactly right. It was, especially in that second innings, I thought, because he got himself into a good spot.
Got dropped as well. I mean, make the most of it.
Yeah, and I just thought, like, the way he got out as well, I just thought, I mean, it was an excellent catch, but by Henry Nicholls, but it just, yeah.
When you're trying,
you think to yourself, if they'd got another 40 runs in that second innings, 40.
Oh, it would have been.
That's such difficult chase.
If we're chasing 200 from 50 overs on that wicket, it's very hard. Yeah, absolutely
it's
right.
So hard.
Instead.
Even with Taylor and Williamson in there. There's a great review by Williamson, and anyway, when he was on. Was he on naught in that second innings?
It's on one,
On one, so...
it's never a doubt, mate. He got given out, and he was immediately there. He knew exactly where where his off stump was.
And then Ross Taylor gets dropped by Pujara again. I think he was on 27 when he got dropped. So, those chances, if they take those chances or that review doesn't get reviewed, then there's a different game as well. But we go back to Richard Pant. If you're a bowler... And that New Zealand bowler, you said that earlier. I think one of you said it earlier. Patience is their word of choice. I would say they just keep bowling and bowling and bowling and bowling in areas, and they're very disciplined in that respect. And that's all you have to do.
3 men behind square.
Yeah.
Chuck 3 men behind square and bowl Neil Wagner round the wicket, bounces. And eventually he's going to not hit one down and find legs through. I mean, I'm not a professional.
And that even worked for Rahane as well. And it's almost like a bravado thing with Rishabh Pant. You put it there, I'll hit you out the ground type thing. And that's definitely right. He's got to get that out of his game before he becomes. I mean, people are putting him in the same bracket as Adam Gilchrist. He's nowhere near that at the moment. Adam Gilchrist is the best there's ever been because he was that capable of changing his game like Ben Stokes does,
I was just going to say, just a quick word on the fielding to Kane Williamson's captaincy. I thought it was absolutely spot on. I was just got a note about the catch. I think Shubman Gill took from Ross Taylor was an absolute screamer, and then the Henry Nicholls catch as well. There were some great catches in the match, and also I have to say. Quick word on Kane Williamson's captaincy. I thought it was unbelievable. I think it was the Shami wicket in India's second innings where he got a big fine edge that went for 4, and then the next ball he put I think it was Latham behind, and they bowled the exact same ball and it went straight down his throat, the first ball. And I think there was a few occasions like that over the Test match where his captaincy really shone.
Yeah, you look at his personality. It's interesting to see the contrast between the two captains. You've got it's like fire and ice, isn't it? You've got like Kohli, who's in your face and is being as aggressive as he can and yelling and screaming and carrying on, and that's got its merits. But contrasting that, nothing seems to faze Williamson. And you look at that, something like that, you get Shami hits the ball for 4 down at fine leg, so the next ball he just sticks somebody in there. It's right, okay, we'll just keep doing what we're planning on doing, and we'll just play good Test cricket for long periods of time. And it's got a mark all over that side. It really has.
Last guys finish first for one day, I think, to quote your tweet.
I did steal that from Simon Doull. It's one of the more intelligent things he's ever said. But I prefer that than the Ian Smith by the barest of all margins.
I listened to Nasser Hussain talking about this World Championship final, and he said it was refreshing to see that both sides went about it in the right way. They could have easily just turned up at Idris Bowl and just batted and just made it a boring game. But they both captains, to be fair, went for it in trying to get a result, etc. And the quality of the bowling for both sides was just phenomenal. I can't imagine how hard it was, in English conditions batting on that against that like the Indian attack. I mean, bloody hell, Sharma, Shami, and Bumrah. That's not something to be sneezed at either. So you've got to give huge credit to the Kiwis for getting through that.
It was great to see a good. It's great to see a good contest between bat and ball, and it was great to see good bowling attacks up against good top orders.
It's just a shame for me. It was just a shame for me that, and I know COVID was this, that he wasn't at Lords. But as it turned out, the Kiwis were there long enough to have done their isolation. The Indians were there long enough to do their isolation, so they could have ended up playing at Lords anyway.
Yeah, it was planned. They scheduled it in Southampton back in February, March time when COVID hit. Well, I mean, COVID's obviously.
I couldn't understand why they couldn't move it back to Lords, because after the COVID things were reduced, the COVID restrictions were reduced, and they're now talking. They're talking about having 60,000 at the semi-finals of European Championships at Wembley.
They've just announced today that they're allowing full capacity at the British Grand Prix.
British Grand Prix, 140,000 at the British Grand Prix. I mean,
everybody's got to be provided everybody's double vaccinated. So I mean, most of us are. So it's fine. But yeah, I mean, I was at Edgbaston on the other week, and there were 18,000 in, and it was a great atmosphere. So you're totally right. I mean, they could have put it back to Lords, but I mean, scheduling and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it would have been nice, a bit more redemption if we won it at Lords, having lost so finally 2 years ago.
I was just going to say, going back to the contest. I just got a note here. So India was 64 for 2 on stumps on day 5. So going into day 6, I think most of us would agree that we would, it was going to be tough to get a result. And I mean, we mentioned it before, but that opening session, I was messaging you, was just unbelievable. They came out on fire. They took a lot of early wickets, and then absolutely rolled through the bowling attack, which is, I mean, India's tail has wagged in a lot of test matches recently. Like, the likes of Axar Patel or Ravi Ashwin have really got them out of trouble in a couple of test matches. But they just completely rolled through them. And then, I mean, they were set a target of 139 to win the game. And in the end, they did it at Cantor. But that opening morning, I think no one was expecting a New Zealand win necessarily. I think most people were heading for the draw. I think QuickViz had it at 79% for the draw at one point. So
yeah, the bookies had New Zealand at about 6-1 at the beginning of day 6. That India at about 15-1, and they had the draw at 2-5 or whatever the corresponding odds are. So yeah, I mean, it was definitely most likely to be a draw. But it's interesting. You talk about the teams playing in the right spirit and teams going for the win. The ball was in New Zealand's court on the beginning of day 6, because it would have been incredibly hard for them to lose from that position. For them, the draw was almost the worst case scenario, given that they were batting last, but India still had to take 10 New Zealand wickets and probably only had a session and a half to do it. So they were able to attack as much as possible, and thankfully from our perspective anyway, it came off. So yeah, it was better to be in their camp than in the Indians at the beginning of that day.
Well, I just wanted to get your perspective. Just Ravi Ashwin comes out just after tea and gets a two openers for relatively cheap. How were you feeling at that point?
Oh, I was breathing into a brown paper bag. No, I was nervous. I mean, the whole country was nervous. I mean, we've been burned so many times before. We've been conditioned for many, many, many years to expect New Zealand to pull defeat from the jaws of victory. And I can give you countless examples in countless places where we've managed to successfully do that. Yeah, I mean, but it wasn't until kind of, I don't know, maybe once we got to 100, maybe there were sort of 40 or 50 runs left to get. Kane steadied the ship, as he does so successfully. And really, as far as the New Zealand top order go, there wouldn't be two batsmen I'd prefer to be at the crease than Williamson and Taylor in that situation. two
in
out of
world
three
cricket,
of
I
the
think, as well.
yeah.
In
But
world cricket, those two.
yeah, our two best batsmen in terms of averages, our two best batsmen in terms of runs scored. There's a hell of a lot of experience out there. They didn't run each other out, which is always a concern when Taylor and Williamson bat. But other than that, I couldn't have been happier for them.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely telling, especially. I mean, they're the two guys that have kind of been there the whole way. I mean, I think there was 7 that lost the last World Cup final that were in that team.
Yeah, well, Southey was 12th man, but yeah, 7 were in the squad. Yeah,
But I think it was quite telling, and I thought it was quite apt that they were the two that were out there when they ended up winning. I think they've been there, through the whole rebuild. I think they were there when he got bowled out for 40 odd in South Africa. So they really were the one that steadied the ship for New Zealand cricket, and it made it what it is now. So I think it was great to see them.
They've been a real nucleus for that team, along with Brendan McCullum, obviously, at the beginning of that rebuild. And we'll probably come on to it, but I saw a tweet from Jimmy Neesham, who is a bit of a legend when it comes to funny tweets, and he said, "How the hell do you drink out of a mace?" It's one of the only problems that we've got with that trophy.
Yeah.
Hey, look, there's one more bloke I reckon deserves a lot of credit, and that's BJ Watling. This is like last Test match, and he's almost like the unsung hero, isn't he? Like, how many times have New Zealand fallen to like 5 for 100 on a real green wicket in Wellington or Auckland?
Yeah,
and he's come and like just dug in and dug in and dug in and end up. Was it his double 100 a couple of years ago where I think he
200 against England,
against England, and he was just like, I mean, I wouldn't. It's almost like you'd put your house on him to do that if you're in trouble. He's a very reliable, but he's not like, nobody would say like he's like the best player, best keeper in the world, the best batsman in the world, but he just does his job, and that's, to me, that sums up New Zealand cricketers or New Zealanders in sport generally. They just do their bloody job, and that's all they need to do. And if they do their job in that, then you've got a winning team.
I think also something that's not been mentioned is in terms of the New Zealand cricket story, certainly over the last two or three decades, is that success is a lousy teacher. Like Australia's obviously had a wonderful period in the late 90s and early noughties, and continued on, and England have had success, and but there've been lots, and so have India obviously, but there've been long periods where New Zealand hasn't performed well for one reason or another. Sometimes it's been outside our control. We can talk about that, but I think they've had to learn from their mistakes, and they've had to learn from their disappointments, and they've managed to come up with a formula that's successful, and they've tried it, and it can't be beaten.
Well, and I think that's a great point, Richard, and I think it's you can see, especially in recent years, how hungry they have been, and how much they've improved over all facets of the game.
Yeah.
And I do think, like, obviously they've got this great nice guy kind of, nice guys of cricket and all that kind of persona. But they are when it comes to they're like on the pitch, they're ruthless in attack, in a lot of cases. And I think it you're right, that has culminated over a lot of years of being the bridesmaids and coming so close.
Yeah. And it's not aggression that they use to get you out, but it's discipline. That's their kind of, they're not going to sledge you, but they're just going to put the ball at the same area, over after over, which in a lot of ways I think is arguably more effective because of
Ian Chappell used to say when he had like Lillian Thompson playing in his side and Lenny Pascoe coming behind him or whatever, that they didn't need a sledge.
I'll throw it to you, Phil. Like, we've heard a lot of critics about the World Test Championship, but I wanted to get your opinions on actually what worked well, first of all, and we'll go into slating it in a bit. But what worked well in this World Test Championships?
I think it's encouraged people to watch Test matches again. Because there is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I don't suppose there would have been many New Zealand or Indian fans coming out to watch that game if there wasn't a mace to be collected at the end of that series. And I'm just so glad that they made that sixth day, because to have just gone out and on a meaningless draw and they share it would have been what's the point type thing.
Prefer to super over again.
Exactly, yeah. So that they got that right. I think, the other games that they should have given more credence to as well, maybe give points to, etc. But I think that's one of the main things that they got right was the final, the actual final itself, and the fact that two sides actually made a point of turning it into a spectacle rather than just another game of Test cricket.
I definitely agree. It's brought meaning to series, but I would, and I understand the reasoning why, but I would like to see every side play every other side in a cycle. If there's not enough room for every Test nation to play each other at least once for one series, whether that's at home or away, then the ICC aren't doing a good enough job, in my humble opinion. They maybe need to shorten certain Test series, and they maybe need to lengthen others. I've banged on about this as long as I've been coming on this podcast that New Zealand shouldn't be playing 2 Test series. Simple.
But now they've got the mace.
Well, yeah, indeed, but that's the thing, because it's a little bit. Obviously I'm over the moon that we've won, and and it's great for the game in New Zealand. But it's still, there will people be saying, but you only beat the Windies over a 2 Test series, and you only beat Pakistan over a 2 Test series, and yeah, I hear that. So it would have been a shame. It's a shame that there wasn't more of a level playing field in terms of numbers of tests played. I understand that the Ashes is special, but for example, I don't see why we need to play 5 tests against the Indians this summer. They could have played 4, and we could have played 3 against New Zealand, for example, just to even it up just a little bit, and I think there'd be a bit more happiness around the world, because at the moment it's the big 3 that rule, and it's all about money, isn't it? So
yeah, to keep going on about this big 3, I don't think England is in that big 3 at the moment.
Maybe not performance-wise, but in terms of
obviously
money
wise and stuff like that, and the fact that they, like England is the home of cricket, historically. I'm totally in agreement with you. I think that I'd love to see 5 Test matches in Australia between New Zealand and Australia with this team.
And if you look at the next cycle, New Zealand and Australia are not playing each other at all, home or away.
Doesn't make sense, does it?
So I think the ICC have come out and they said that after this cycle they'll review. So doing this one and then the one coming up, they're going to come out and review. I think, well, this will lead us on to improvements. I actually think that you're completely right. I think the other thing that I've heard bandied around, which I think could work quite well, is they actually have a pool system where they split the Test nations into 2 pools, and you play home and away series against your pool, and then the winners of each pool go into a final. I think that probably would work quite well, and then at least, logistically, you are playing each side in your pool home and away.
It's just hard when you've got a game that takes 5 days to complete, and you probably want to play each other more than once. It's not like the T20 or the One Day World Cup where it can be over in 6 weeks. But yeah, I don't dislike that idea. Provided, of course, that those pools were allocated randomly, which you can't necessarily be assured of. But I don't think. I think 2 years is probably enough time for each Test nation to play each other in one series, whether that's at home or that's away. And I understand that there's been COVID, and obviously we've had to make amends. But just in terms of just leveling the playing field, and from a cricket purist perspective, I don't think anyone can disagree with that. No matter who you want, no matter who you support, whether that's New Zealand, Australia, England, whatever, just seeing a fair, level playing field across the board is just good for cricket.
You want to make it a true championship, so everybody plays everybody else, and then you'll get rid of that. People saying, "Oh, you only played the West Indies, you only played this lot, you only played that lot." You'll get rid of that, and that you'll have a true result. I'd I'd really love to. I'd really love to see. I know obviously the Ashes take precedence this year, but next in that why couldn't Australia go to New Zealand after the Ashes?
Yeah, well, there's one day cricket and there's T20 cricket and there's
this is
IPL
my biggest bugbear is this meaningless, shitty one day crap that we have to suffer. I mean, like England at the moment playing Sri Lanka at Cardiff, second game on a rubbish pitch in Cardiff with about 10
2 days in a row.
With 10 people there, 2 days in a row. It's pouring with rain. They've gone off for rain. Why? What's it there for? I know that it's the T20 World Cup, etc., etc.
It can't be generating all that much revenue either, from a money perspective.
I would have thought so. I mean, look, Welsh cricket fans, they love their cricket. They do go out, but Wales has been hit harder than most during COVID, so they're not going to be out there at this present time going, to watch games in Cardiff. It's not. They're not going to be there.
And T20 fans are going to be watching the 100 and all that.
Exactly,
so.
and the blast and whatever. So
yeah.
And no disrespect to Sri Lanka, but they're not got a team of superstars at them.
Well, and the other thing, I think it goes back to the diversity as well, in the sense that, right, we've seen England play Sri Lanka in a test series not all that long ago. I mean, it was probably about 3 or 4 months ago. I think that is a massive contributor. Like, I think a few years ago, I think Australia, up until recently, hasn't played the West Indies in like 5 or 6 years, right? We've seen Australia play India every year, almost every 2 years. You've seen England play India every, 3 months ago. It's
that only has to do with revenue, in my opinion.
Well, exactly.
That has to be the only reason they're doing that is because they think they're going to get big crowds. But it doesn't give the lesser nations, in inverted commas, a chance to prove how good they are. New Zealand now, and they've been treated like shit for years, they deserve to have at least 3-4 tests against Australia, and at least 4 tests against England, and at least 4 tests against India, home and away. And if that's not done, then I think there's something wrong somewhere, because they're the number one test station in the world. It shouldn't have to wait until they become this number one test station for that to happen, mind you. I think it should have happened years ago. And that goes the same. Like we should have Pakistan should be playing 3 test series against England and Australia, but they only play up against two series, 2 tests and. So it's all got. It has to do with revenue.
But I think, right, you're always going to have these lesser nations if you're only playing them 2 tests every 6 years against the big teams. So I think you have to persist with these small nations, and if it means losing money in the short term, I think New Zealand's a great example. If you persist with these nations, and I don't think they've done it particularly well, but and it becomes a more even spread of test playing nations. Then I think you get the crowds and the revenue and stuff that come with it. Like, how much is the ICC going to make off New Zealand cricket now, right?
And players will improve by playing against the top nations in longer, like 3 test series rather than just 2 test series.
And you get all these, like I'm looking at like Rashid Khan in Afghanistan and that kind of thing. Like, he's like one of the best spin bowlers in the world at the moment, right? Imagine you put playing him against the Australians in Test cricket or whatever, and then the rest of the team flourishes as well.
I think all that New Zealand. I'm speaking on behalf of New Zealanders now. I hope I'm okay to do that, Richard. I just
depends what you're going to say.
I just think that they should get a fairer share of the pie.
No higher position that we can kind of get. We can say to the ICC, look, we've come as close to winning a one-day World Cup as you possibly can get. And we've won the test, and we've won the World Test Championship, and we've done that in the space of 2 years. So yeah, let us have something more than the scraps. I mean,
and they've done it in a way which is pleasing on the eye as well.
Yeah, and we've not pissed off anyone that we've beaten. Like there's not been any kind of scandal. There's not, that's another podcast. But you're right. New Zealand is probably the neutrals' favourite team.
Absolutely.
Just because of the way
everybody's favourite team is New Zealand.
After their own
other
team.
Than the team they exactly. Yeah.
So it'd be really nice if we could do that, but time will tell.
Well, what do you perceive? Like, and I suppose we can almost end this after your final word. But what do you perceive the future of New Zealand cricket in the short term future, the next couple of years? How do you see the things? The wheels chugging along and it keep going the way it's going, and obviously more publicity and more crowds and everything like that within New Zealand.
Yeah, I'm really positive about it actually, because obviously there will be people that will retire. I mean, Ross Taylor's about 47 now, so which is probably it's about time he hung up his boots. But we've got a good crop of players coming through. We don't have huge amounts of depth, but we've got that top level, those 11, 15, 20 odd players in the country, are able to beat anyone. Williamson's still young. Williamson's not quite. Is he 30? Certainly, if he is 30, so he's got a lot more time left in him, especially because he's a top order batsman. So his body's not going to break down in the same way that if he was a bowler. We've got some good bowlers coming through. Kyle Jameson and the like. And somebody, obviously we'll have to find a replacement for BJ. And obviously our one day side is quite good as well. With obvious results. So I'm hopeful that this isn't going to be like, when England won the Rugby World Cup in 2003, and they reached the pinnacle, and then they went, right, we're done now, and then they're not very good anymore. So yeah, and just the way that New Zealand play their cricket suggests to me that that this method is going to continue to work for them. They're not reliant on specific superstars. They're not chopping and changing things and doing stuff in a way that they're just being consistent, playing Test cricket for long periods of time. Obviously, we're going to have losses. Obviously, we're not going to win everything that we try to play. But yeah, I'm positive for our future.
I just think that what showed in that 2-test series with England was the fact that they were able to make 6 changes to the side for that second test and win that comfortably. Which goes to show that there is a pretty good, strength in depth at the moment. But I think what the most important thing for New Zealand is like you say, not to rest on their laurels and make sure that this becomes a platform for further success, and that the train doesn't just keep going through and they miss out on the next 10 years of good cricket, because England did that for sure. I mean, England won the Ashes in 2005 and thought, it's coming home, all that shit, and decided, and then next year they go out to Australia and get smashed 5-0. And then they win the Ashes again in 2010, 2011 in Australia. Same thing happens, and then they
set their own house on fire.
They do, and then they end up with players like Dom Sibley and Rory Burns, whose techniques are, and you're thinking to yourself, well, where is the priorities?
I was a bit worried that there was a bit of a change of the guard in 2015 for New Zealand when I know McCullum retired a year later, but when we fell short against the Aussies in the World Cup, and Vittori retired and McCullum retired, that's a lot of experience bowing out, and I was worried that we weren't able to continue on, and we arguably got better in that time. So I'm not going to say we're going to get better, but I do have faith in the kind of processes that they're going through, that they can continue on this journey in a positive way.
Well, I think most kids growing up in New Zealand, you'd know better than me, want to be All Blacks when they grow up. But do you think if you now look at these black caps and want to become black caps instead?
We like an underdog. I mean, obviously the All Blacks are an immense source of pride in New Zealand, and every time they run out, we're really proud of them, and it's great that they do well. But in some ways, we feel a lot more affinity to the Black Caps because they are the little guys. I mean, the All Blacks are the India of rugby. So that's a very different thing to have. Rugby is our biggest export, but personally, growing up, I felt I got a lot more excited when the Black Caps were playing and winning than when the All Blacks were winning, because when you support the All Blacks, which I do, it's a very negative experience because you're making sure they don't lose. The expectation for the All Blacks is that they win all the time. So when you're watching them, you're like, don't lose, don't lose, don't lose, and you get really annoyed when they do. Whereas when the Black Caps play, you don't have that same expectation, and when they do win, it's all that more satisfying. And having seen the All Blacks win a Rugby World Cup and the Black Caps now win a World Test Championship, I actually think that the Black Caps' successes were a little bit sweeter.
Great. Well, that's all positive, and winners are gunners. Hey, Richard.
Yeah. Maybe I should retire from watching cricket. I retire. This is just can't get any better than this.
Well, we'll leave it there. But thanks for your time, boys, and congratulations, New Zealand. Long may they be the nice guys of cricket, hey?
Nice guys finish first occasionally.